Welcome back to Fluency on the Road. In our last conversation, we explored how travel becomes the ultimate language classroom. Today, we're going deeper. How language not only helps us navigate, but helps us discover the true soul of a place. We'll talk about getting off the tourist trail, thinking in another language, savoring the culture, and keeping your fluency alive long after the trip is over. Our guest is back to continue this journey. Welcome.
Thanks for having me back. It's great to continue digging into this fascinating topic.
Topic 5. Beyond the tourist trail, language as the key. Many travelers stick to a script of well-known tourist spots. How does the effort of speaking the local language allow us to unlock doors to authentic experiences far from the crowds?
Language is essentially the master key to the local culture. When you only speak English or your native tongue, locals tend to direct you to the tourist circuit because it's easier. But when you start a conversation in their language, however hesitantly, you signal something different. You signal, I'm not just here to see, I'm here to understand. This can lead to unexpected invitations, an invite to a neighborhood festival that isn't in the guidebooks, a tip about a hidden family-run restaurant, or even a deep conversation with a shop owner about local history. Language transforms you from a passive spectator into an active participant.
Do you have an example of an off-the-script experience that was only possible because of the language?
One time in Greece, I was trying to read a sign in Greek about a local event. An older gentleman saw me struggling, and instead of just translating, he started explaining to me in slow Greek about a patron saints festival that was happening that night. Because I was able to maintain the conversation, he invited me to go with his family. I ended up at an authentic celebration with music, dancing, and homemade food miles from any tourist hotel. That night is one of my most precious travel memories, and it would have been impossible without a little knowledge of the language.
Topic 6. Thinking in another language, the fluency threshold. That total immersion leads us to our next topic, which is a fascinating milestone for any learner. What happens in our minds when we stop translating and start thinking directly in the new language?
That is the true threshold of fluency. It's a magical and often subtle moment. You realize you're narrating your actions in your head in the new language, or you have a dream where everyone was speaking it. It means your brain has created new neural pathways. Instead of going from concept to your native language to new language, it goes directly from concept to new language. This makes speaking much faster and more natural. It's also when you start to understand humor, jokes, and wordplay, which are almost impossible to translate literally.
How can a traveler speed up that process of starting to think in another language?
Full immersion is the fastest way. Try to create a linguistic bubble. Change the language on your phone and your computer. Listen to local music and podcasts. Try to describe what you see around you in your mind using the vocabulary you have. Don't worry if it's simple. Instead of thinking, what a beautiful building, try to think it directly in the target language. Forcing your brain to constantly operate in this new mode, even for simple thoughts, accelerates the transition.
Topic 7. Cuisine and conversation. Ordering food like a local. Changing how we think is a big step, but let's talk about something more universal and delicious. Food. How can learning the vocabulary related to cuisine be one of the most enjoyable ways to connect with a culture?
Food is the universal language, but the way we talk about it is deeply cultural. Learning to order a specific dish, ask about ingredients, or compliment the chef in the local language is an incredible show of respect and interest. It opens doors to wonderful conversations. The local market, in particular, is a fantastic classroom. You can point to an unknown fruit and ask, what is this? How do you eat it? Vendors usually love to share their knowledge, and you learn vocabulary you'd never find in a book.
What tip would you give a traveler who wants to go beyond just pointing at the menu?
Before you go to a restaurant, learn one or two key phrases. Instead of just saying the name of the dish, learn to say, I'd like to try the house specialty, or what do you recommend? This simple question can lead the waiter to share a story about the dish, its origin, or give you an authentic suggestion that wouldn't be obvious to a tourist. It shows you trust their knowledge and are open to a cultural experience, not just a meal.
Topic 8. bringing it all back, keeping fluency alive post-trip. After all these incredible experiences, we come to the final challenge. How do we keep our new level of fluency alive when we return to our normal routine?
This is the most crucial and often the most neglected step. Fluency is like a muscle. If you don't use it, it atrophies. The key is to integrate the language into your daily life. Continue to consume content in that language. Find TV series, movies, podcasts, or books that interest you. Find a language exchange partner online to practice conversation. Change your routines. Why not follow the news in a foreign newspaper or cook from a recipe in that language? The goal is to transform the language from a subject of study to a living, active part of your daily life.
To close, what is your favorite method for keeping your own fluency sharp after a trip?
My favorite method is to find a community. I look for expat groups or language enthusiast meetups in my city, or I participate in online forums. Sharing the interest with other people keeps motivation high. Also, I plan my next trip. Having a future goal, knowing I will need those skills again, is the best incentive to keep practicing. The journey of fluency, just like travel, never really ends.
A perfect mindset. The journey of fluency never ends. Thank you for another conversation full of practical tips and inspiration.
The pleasure was mine.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Fluency on the Road. May the lessons from your travels last a lifetime. Welcome to Fluency on the Road, the podcast where we unlock the world through words. Today, we're exploring a powerful idea that the best language classroom has no walls, but landscapes instead. We'll be discussing how travel can be your greatest ally in achieving fluency, transforming you from a mere tourist into a true cultural explorer. I'm here with our guest to dive into this topic. Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm excited to talk about this, as it's a topic that's very close to my heart.
Topic 1. Travel as the classroom. To start, a direct question. What does immersion in a foreign country offer that a traditional language course, no matter how good, simply cannot replicate?
It's a fundamental difference between learning about a language and living a language. In a classroom, you study grammar rules and vocabulary in a controlled environment. Through immersion, the language becomes a survival tool. You need to use it for basic needs, ordering a coffee, buying a train ticket, asking for directions. Every small interaction is a practical and immediate lesson. Beyond that, your mind is constantly processing information in the target language, from street signs to conversations you overhear in a restaurant. It's a learning bombardment that exponentially accelerates fluency.
That practical necessity must be a huge motivator. Do you remember a situation where a real need forced you to use the language and you felt you made a leap in your fluency?
Absolutely. I was once in Tokyo, in a giant subway station, and my transit card wasn't working. I had studied a little Japanese, but I was very nervous. The station attendant only spoke Japanese. I had to gather all the phrases I knew, gesture, and finally I managed to explain the problem. It wasn't a fluent conversation, but when he smiled and helped me, I felt a huge sense of accomplishment. It was a, wow, I can do this moment. Those small successes are what truly build your confidence.
Your story leads us to our next topic, which is fear. Many travelers who are learning a new language feel a paralyzing fear of making mistakes and being judged. How can we overcome this fear of speaking and embrace the process of making errors?
Fear is the biggest obstacle to fluency. The first thing to understand is that a mistake isn't a sign of failure, it's a sign that you're trying. Most people want to help you, not judge you. My number one tip is to start small. Memorize 2 or 3 essential phrases and use them. The practice of good morning, thank you, and please in a local language already opens doors and shows respect. Tip number 2 is to use body language. A smile, a gesture, communicates a lot and reduces the pressure to be perfect. The third point is to have a sense of humor. I've made hilarious blunders on my travels, and learning to laugh at yourself is liberating.
Laughing at your own mistakes sounds like great advice. Is there a funny blunder you can share to break the ice?
Of course.
In Italy, I tried to ask a woman where the market, mercato, was, but my pronunciation of the ka came out wrong, and instead of market, I said a word that means death. She looked at me with a face of shock and fear for a second until the context of my question made her laugh. She corrected me warmly and helped me. It's a story I still tell today, and it reminds me that communication is more important than perfection.
Your story shows the importance of cultural context, which brings us to our next topic. Language books teach us grammar, but slang and local expressions are the soul of a language. How can a traveler begin to pick up on and use these local nuances?
The best way is through observation and imitation. Pay attention to how people talk to each other, listen to a conversation in a cafe, watch a TV show, or listen to a local radio station. Don't worry about understanding everything. Just listen for the intonation and recurring phrases. Then try to use them in an appropriate context. Like in Spain, people often say vale, to agree. Using that instead of a formal yes already brings you closer to the local culture. Learning slang takes you from tourist language to local language.
It's like having an entry pass to the culture. Is there an expression you learned on a trip that changed the way you communicated?
Yes. In Portugal, people use the word fixe a lot for something that's cool or nice. I had learned bom, good, in the books. But when I started using fixe, the conversations became more fluid, and the locals seemed more at ease with me. It was a small detail, but it made me feel like I was truly participating, not just observing.
Topic 4, building real connections. That feeling of participation is the peak of travel and fluency, which brings us to our final topic. Why is using the local language the key to going beyond being a tourist and building true, authentic human connections with locals?
Because language is the bridge to vulnerability and empathy. When you make the effort to speak someone's language, you're not just transmitting information, you're demonstrating respect and interest. Most people are genuinely happy to see a foreigner trying. This opens the door to invitations, unexpected conversations, and experiences that would never be in a travel guide. The language allows you to hear people's life stories, understand their perspectives, and create memories that aren't about the places you saw, but about the people you met.
That's a beautiful thought. The best travel memories are really about the connections we make. To close, what was the most meaningful connection you built on a trip because of your effort to speak the language?
Once, in Morocco, I was in a small town and tried to buy something from an old man's shop. He didn't speak English, and I only knew a few phrases in Arabic. I stood there for about 10 minutes trying to negotiate, and he was laughing at my pronunciation. When we finally managed to understand each other, he invited me to have tea with him and his family. He told me that he didn't care about my perfect words, but about my effort. We spent the afternoon talking, with him teaching me new words. It wasn't just a transaction, it was a human connection. That afternoon was the richest part of my trip, and it was only possible because I decided to try to speak.
A beautiful story. The language is a tool, but the heart is the intention. A wonderful principle to end our conversation on. Thank you so much for this inspiring talk.
The pleasure was all mine.
And to our listeners, thank you for joining us on Fluency on the Road. May your next trip also be your next great language lesson.